Welcome to the Momentum Lifestyle Podcast, where we interview an inspiring, educational, and entertaining guest to help you build confidence, find balance, and live a life of impact. We'd like to thank our sponsor today, Be Spunky. Now, Blake, Gino, and myself have been using their Reboot product for well over 6 months now, and it has been life-changing. I found myself recovering faster, having way more energy throughout the day, and honestly feeling just more jacked up as a man. And this is because Reboot is clinically formulated to support healthy male hormone levels, providing stress relief, improved strength and stamina, enhanced drive, and overall well-being. Be Spunky Reboot contains a proprietary blend of 10 natural and organic herbs and active ingredients that are renowned for helping men to enhance physical and cognitive performance, improve stamina, energy, and endurance, optimize testosterone levels, support healthy reproductive function, support cardiovascular function, relieve stress, mild anxiety, irritability, relieve tiredness, fatigue, support healthy sleep patterns, and support healthy body weight. So as you can see, it is a must-have product for all men. So head to their website, bespunky.com.au. That's bespunki.com.au, and use the code MOMENTUM to receive 10% off all Be Spunky products.
Nick Bracks, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, mate. It's great to reconnect with you.
Mate, it's been a good decade since we did some silly behaviour together back in the Clio days. But mate, for those that don't know you or your story, can you give a 60 to 90 second insight into you, where you've been and where things are at for you now?
Sure. And yeah, it is. It's been 10 years. So it's great to reconnect. I work in the area of mental health. I fell into that over 10 years ago, I guess, probably not long before I actually met you. And that came about from my own personal experience. I grew up in a well-known political family and had my own issues growing up with OCD, overthinking, anxiety, manifested in a range of ways. And I was getting in a lot of trouble and was off the rails. And it wasn't until I sort of finally started piecing things back together that I actually wound up in the public eye myself and was on different reality shows and had an opportunity to talk about what I was going through. And that led to me sort of becoming passionate about the area and seeing how many people needed to hear those kind of things. And over the last 10 years, organically, just developed that into a seminar company, did a whole range of other businesses along the way, got into acting and built an entertainment sort of career. And really the mental health work has just been, the driving force for me, and it's turned into, what I do now. And it's my life's, mission to just try and help in that area. So that's, just a quick overview.
I remember we spoke about it briefly when we're doing some work together. Yeah, a big 10 odd years ago. And you really were, in my eyes, one of the kind of first people to be really open and transparent about it. I know that at that stage, a decade ago, there was noise about it, but there was still quite a strong stigma, and credit to you, because it takes a lot to kind of step forward into that, especially as one of the early adopters of, really being vulnerable as to your struggles. What have you seen as the change over the last 10 years from, where it was for you and the stigma around it as to, where it's positioned now?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, it was definitely so much more taboo and less of a thing to talk about back then. There are a lot more people talking about it now. I think things like, COVID's really accelerated that as well, where people just got to a point where, it was one of the positive things, I guess, that came out of it, where people just had no choice but to talk about it because they're suffering. And that's helped push that forward further. I think, it's which has been, fantastic. So I think it is really good that we've got people standing up and talking about it. There's so many resources out there. I think probably the next stage now is how can we create more preventative solutions in that area, because there's a lot of noise out there, which is fantastic. But I think that can in itself can create overwhelm, because people can think, where do I actually go? Who do I listen to? Who's credible? Who's not? What's good? What's bad? So I feel like that's sort of the next stage of how can we get it to a point where people just know, the same as going to the gym or that kind of stuff. Where can I actually go to get these resources and do these things that are going to, help me on a daily basis to, create more preventative behaviors and, build more resilience and all that kind of thing.
I could not agree with you more on that point. And every year, and some of those special days that are really important from an awareness point of view, Are You OK Day, and some of those other days, I'm very strong on making it known that there's like awareness is step one, and now we need a support system and a structure that actually helps people go to stage two, because awareness without a support system is, as you said, overwhelming and quite challenging as well. So what was your support system like? And obviously you're spending a lot of time in the US at the moment. What are you seeing from a support system that's working, and in your eyes, what might not be working?
Personally for me, or you? Yep. So for me, I guess I've been fortunate that I've always had, really close friendships and a good circle around me, close family. That was probably the problem at the beginning, or, when you first saw me and when I was first talking about it, I'd sort of, like a lot of men or a lot of people, I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't even have the self-awareness to really understand what was going on at the time. So it was when I worked through all of that, I found out for me, really the number one thing is I've got people that, I need to communicate if I'm feeling overwhelmed or need to, try and work out what's going on. So having these, unconditional relationships where I've got sort of, 3 people that I can talk to 24/7. So for me in New York, for example, that helps dramatically because and I've lived my life where I've been, a bit transient, and you're on the other side of the world, and you could be sitting there and thinking, God, I'm alone, and I'm struggling. I can't even go and walk and, see family or friends. But knowing that, no matter what time it is, if it's 3 a.m. in Australia, you can still send them a message. They'll get back if they can. They're there to take a call, and, you offer them the same. So I talk about that so much, where I think it's just so important. It's simple, but a lot of us, know a lot of people, but don't necessarily have those unconditional relationships. So I'd say that's number one. And number two for me is, I have a very uncertain, fluid lifestyle, I guess, with my work and where I'm living and all that kind of thing. But then I've made sure to be incredibly sort of routine in things I do every day for myself. So exercise has been the biggest, which I do 6 days a week, and try to do in the morning, because for me, it's sort of, my mind's racing in the morning. That's when I'm most anxious. And I feel like getting up and exercising is just, resets that and gets me ready for the day. So, that's the most important. And then things like meditation, journaling, a whole range of things like that. Acting actually has probably been the other one. Like I got into that a while back and still do it on and off, and love it. But I feel like for me, it's an outlet. And every time I'm doing that, it actually helps with my business and work, because it gets my mind out of, being stuck and obsessing on you're trying to do and doing something creative for yourself. And then you can actually reapproach things. So, that's probably for myself, like some of the, the key things that help me.
You mentioned the unconditional support system. I think you said there's 3 people in particular that stand out to you. What constitutes those 3 people, and what has them stand out ahead of potentially the rest of people in terms of support for you?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I'd say it's, the fact that you know each other inside out, and in the sense of, your deepest secrets, you're vulnerable, you sort of understand the mechanics of what's going on in each other's lives, how your mind works, what's happening. So when you know people that well and you have that kind of relationship, I guess like you could call them and, you only have to say in 30 seconds what's going on. They know, boom, okay, great. They know exactly what to say to you and how to help you rationalize it. And I feel like a lot of the time, you can get stuck in your own head if you're, fixating on something or worried about something. And the more you think about it, you can't think your way out of a problem, and you're going to make it worse. And if you do speak to someone like that understands it, they can quickly, help snap you out of it. And obviously, which I do and, recommend you can do a lot of this stuff yourself as well. But I think just having that sounding board really helps. So I'd say that's what it is. It's really just people that you have that deep, sort of connection, or you've shared that, level of vulnerability with, that just you both know each other's ins and outs so well that you can instantly, understand where they're coming from, or when you're hearing that.
When you reflect on those three people in particular, is it a skill that was developed by them? Was it empathy? They understand empathy because they've also struggled, or was it a case of you potentially communicating what you need from that unconditional support network, or a mix of all of that? What constitutes that, just for others that might go, okay, how do I become that person?
Yeah, it's a really good question as well. I'd say it's a mix for me, like where I've gravitated to people over time that are more, I guess, into similar things, or more, show more vulnerability and that kind of thing. But then at the same time, I've got friends who completely the opposite of that. But then, yeah, you've been able to, guide them and try and communicate with them on where you're coming from, and develop that, which I think is really important as well. Probably what's more important, because we need, if people don't have that ability to talk about, personal things, or to show vulnerability, or whatever it is, it's not their fault. This is a societal thing where we're not taught this stuff. It's why I'm ranting on about this 10 years later, that we need to, it's starting to happen more in schools, but we need more of that. We need to change the conversation. It's a generational thing. So it's really, I think, like you're saying, how do we sort of help, or what's the message to people that are maybe wanting to explore this or look at different things? It's sort of helping them understand, well, you know what, like it's okay that, it's like anything. If you want to try anything new, there's a starting point, and we haven't been taught this. So like, you shouldn't be expected to sort of know where to begin, but where can we start from, and what can we start doing to chip away at that?
How many years ago was it that you found yourself in a little bit of trouble? 12, 13 years?
That would have been, 13, 14 years ago,
13,
which is
14
kind of
years
crazy.
ago.
I know, making me feel old, mate. It's, a bit
Mate,
scary.
trust me. I know that feeling. What did, in hindsight, and as you reflect in it, and I've heard you kind of, some of your talking over with your book as well, when you reflect on it, what constituted that? What got you into trouble, now that you've had a lot of time to reflect on it? And what did you need at the time as well, in terms of support, or people around you?
I think what it was number one, not having, the awareness about what was going on. So not really even knowing, or having that ability to sort of think outside of myself and sort of look and have that self-awareness. And number two, I think, was probably denial, not wanting to actually deal with it, probably terrified of actually having to look at the world from a different lens, or having to, change my behavior. And I was scared, I think it was just feeling like overwhelmed. I don't know how to deal with this. I don't know who I am, what I want to do. So many feelings at once that just, not, and feeling so much shame about that, feeling, deep shame about talking about it, about not having the answers, about all these things, which, and you think back now, like you're saying, 14 years later, looking at the pressures as well, as like a 8, 19, 20-year-old kid, of what you think you need to be doing, and thinking, why, like, even now I'm like, well, why does it matter? We don't have to, we're learning, it takes, but you're thinking so irrationally. And I guess not having the life experience at that point, it's so hard to rationalize things. So I think it was just a combination of so many things, of feeling, suppressed, of feeling like it would be weak to talk about that. Not, I wanted to be a professional athlete. That was like a huge thing for me as well, where my body had broken down and I couldn't train anymore. And at that age, I thought, well, if I can't be an athlete, I don't want to have a future. That's all I care about doing. And I guess because I've always had, OCD, obsessive, sort of, again, didn't know how to deal with that. Now I've learned, it's still there, but you learn how to deal with it. But that was channeled into sport, and that was gone. So then the identity was gone. And I thought, well, I don't want a future. I don't care. Like, if I can't be a professional athlete, what's the point of anything? So I was really battling with all those kind of thoughts and not knowing what to do.
Self-awareness, shame, and suppression are a pretty dangerous cocktail. What's helped you, I guess, raise your awareness and move through shame and suppression over the last 10 years in particular?
I would say talking to people, educating myself, I guess being involved in, in the industry as well, just learning. I'd say just, being, probably the number one thing is just being honest with yourself about, where am I right now? What is it that I really want? Assessing things, really trying to, be honest, which is so hard to do. And I still, can't always do that well, but I try to. So really just thinking about that kind of stuff, observing the relationships you have around you, being able to set boundaries with other people is so important. I think another thing for me was naturally I was always a people pleaser and would have have a lot of difficulty setting boundaries, and that would lead to a lot of, problems as well. So I think that, and for a lot of people, boundaries is a hard thing, but we have to, and in this day and age, especially where, the exposure we have through technology and just information that's coming at us. And if you don't have boundaries, you're not going to be able to get enough done because we'll just, we'll be overloaded.
You've brought out a book, which is awesome, and congratulations on that. What's Move Your Mind really about?
Yeah, thank you, mate. Launched that last year. So I was actually meant to fly back from New York in August last year and couldn't because of COVID. But it was a sort of a long work in progress getting that book put together. And really it's a combination of, it's got my own story threaded through it. And then we've interviewed a range of people from different celebrities to wellness experts and grassroots sort of stories. And the idea of it, I guess similar to what I do with my company, Move Your Mind, is two main things. How can we educate people through just engaging, relatable sort of storytelling? And then how can we provide really simple, practical tools that anyone on some level can sort of use across a range of areas of wellness? And so that's what we tried to achieve, because I feel like a lot of books, it's either got, very strong in the story part, but not practical, or it's too practical and doesn't have that. So, I mean, we were trying to, which is hard to do, but to try and find a way, how can you have a bit of both in a really engaging way? So yeah, that was the idea.
Awesome. And you've spoken obviously at length around, some of the struggles with overthinking, overwhelm, OCD, anxiety, self-sabotage. How is the anxiety for you now compared to, say, 10 years ago? How do you see anxiety compared to how you might have? And also, what are the tools that you found most effective for helping you manage it or move through it?
Yeah. And I mean, it's something that I try and be so open about as well. Like, I work in this area, still run seminars. I've got my business where we run workshops and do stuff in companies. And I'm the first to put my hand up to say, hey, this is an ongoing process, and I still suffer from these things. And I'll still have periods where I might be more anxious or less anxious, but it's still very much a thing. And I think it's not about, with any of this stuff, you don't really get to a point where you just overcome it and you're okay. Because it's the same as saying, I want to go and lose 20 kilos, and you exercise and eat well, and then you do all these things to get there, and then you just stop. You sort of, the weight's going to come back on. So it's an ongoing process. So it's never sort of not there, but you learn how to manage it better, learn how to understand it. I think the awareness part of really observing, hey, my mind's going down this tangent again. Okay, is this going to help me at all? No, it's not. Well, is sitting here and ruminating on this and thinking about it for 2 hours going to help me? No. So what can I do? Okay, I'm going to just get up and go for a walk, call someone, break that pattern. I feel like that's probably the, most powerful way to do it. The other thing I started doing would be, and I still do this now, when my mind is thinking about illogical things, or I'm feeling anxious, or, it's going down that path, I'll get the phone and I'll just write down what is going through my head and just make notes on it, because then I feel like you can sort of, just getting it out of your head and putting it either on paper or, writing it down. It really helps to rationalize it. And then you can sort of look back on it and think, wow, this is where my mind was. And, how was I getting that, out of touch with reality when that happened? And it just helps you over time to try and sort of understand and, chip away at breaking that cycle. So I'd say, yeah, things like that are so important. And just for me, the number one thing's always been, I guess, immersion therapy. If I'm worried about something or anxious, or you've got a fear or whatever it is, the fear of the event is always so much more terrifying than the actual like doing of it. So just reminding yourself that, and not trying to avoid uncomfortable things that you need to do that are good for you. Reminding yourself when you're sitting in that feeling anxious about worrying, what the outcome is, whatever the thing is that you're about to do, reminding yourself, well, okay, this is, it's not going to be as scary as it feels right now. And if I don't go and do it, I'm actually going to have this, I'm going to prolong this anxiety. So I'm just going to go and do it anyway. I'm going to sit through being uncomfortable. And that's okay. I think it's, people are lying if they say life's not going to be hard or not going to be uncomfortable, and you're not going to have, no matter what point you get to or how successful you are, you're going to have ups and downs, and it's always going to be difficult. So just reminding yourself that that's normal and that's okay.
What are the circumstances these days that make you feel more anxious? Is there a certain number of environments, or we spoke before we came on camera, you obviously spend a lot of time in New York, and I'm in Byron Bay, and my nervous system definitely likes Byron Bay a lot better than the big towns. But is there certain environments or situations that kind of challenge your anxiety these days more so than others?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I'm actually similar, where I find having more that simple kind of, environment around you is just so much better for the nervous system, and not having too much stimulation and all those kind of things. So New York's sort of the opposite of all of that. But even within that, I have to have, my own sort of safe place to go back to, make sure that I can control the environment, make sure that, I'm doing things that I, want to sort of do daily, time to exercise, for me, it's, I just need to make sure that I've got enough alone time to be able to just observe and process things. So I find if you're sort of in that situation where, I think you were talking about it, before as well, before we got on here, when you're in a situation where you've just got too many social events and people around you, and it's ongoing, like I can't do it. And I even found that I'm back in Melbourne at the moment, and you sort of at the beginning meeting people and doing things and catching up, and get to a point where I'm like, I actually need to slow down on this, because I need that time alone, and that time to, that space. So I feel like being really observant of that, and making sure that you're assessing it, and if it is getting in the way of things, then making sure that you're doing what you need to do. Because I feel like a lot of people could just fall into the trap of not assessing that, and not really knowing why they're getting burnt out or feeling upset all the time. But so it's so important. But yeah, New York's probably makes it a lot more challenging, mate.
Yeah, mate, I'd struggle
a huge amount more
now. I'd struggle with that. You mentioned safe place and alone time. Would you consider yourself more introverted than extrovert?
Oh god, yeah, I'd say I'm like incredibly introverted. I'm sort of always been like that. I draw energy from being alone. I've learned to, I guess I used to be, well, still am naturally very shy. I've learned to be better in that area through, public speaking, through being, I guess, in that, having that sort of side of things happen in my life. And I enjoy, socializing and being around people, but I can only do it in, small doses. And I'm actually so interested in that stuff, because like people, like my favorite place, I was living in Vancouver for 2 years, and it's still my favorite place in the whole world to live, because for what a lot of people hate, I love. Like, so basically rains 70% of the year. It's most days it's completely covered in cloud. It's like misty. You've got mountains in the back. And for me, that's literally heaven. I'm sitting there. I'm like, this is like taking Valium. I'm looking up. I'm like, it just calms me down. And then listening to like depressing music, that's like, I'll be in the gym, you know, like pumping weights, and I've got like Bon Iver or something playing, and it just calms me down. And so I started looking into this stuff, and, you know, they say, I think it's a small percent, maybe 5% of people, you know, are highly, or 7% are highly sensitive. And it is a lot of things like that, where it's just, I guess, if you're sort of more sensitive to stimulation. So if it's like, you know, bright sunshine outside, I'll actually find that a bit uncomfortable and overwhelming. Or, you know, going to a festival where there's loud music, or I can't stand it, you know, or when you're out somewhere, you're having to like yell in someone's ear to talk to them. I'm like, fuck this. I'd rather just, you know, I want to go home. Like, I want to talk to you, but like, this is painful. Like, how is this enjoyable? Having like all this noise and yelling and screaming. I'd like, why can't we just sit somewhere quiet and talk? So it's like that kind of thing.
Oh, mate, I resonate deeply. So did you find yourself, and you've mentioned self-awareness a couple of times now, did you find yourself at any stage with almost like internal conflict, potentially even before you really understood, you know, just how introverted you are, of like, or, you know, feeling called and pulled towards wanting to spend a lot of time alone, but you should be out, you should be doing A, B, and C. Did you find at any stage yourself with some kind of internal conflict around those?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think when I was younger, I think I was probably aware of it to a degree, but then had a vision of who I should be or how I should be living my life. And, you know, you just end up running yourself into the ground, and you're not really, you're not listening to it. You're sort of just doing all these things that you feel like you need to do. And that, did cause a lot of conflict and a lot of discomfort, and it's not sustainable. You know, you can't. How can you sustain working against your fundamental nature? You know, you can't do that for too long.
Yeah. As you've said a couple of times, anyone who's trying to do that will often lead to burnout. And I think burnout's always a good indication that you're probably going against your true nature in some way, whether you're not aligned or whether, you know, other avenues as well. You mentioned compulsive thoughts, overthinking, and OCD. How does that look now for you compared to like 5 or 10 years ago? And is there a different set of tools that you might use for that as opposed to anxiety, or does that all kind of wrap into the same ball?
Similar. Yeah, I'd say the OCD anxiety is so linked, and anxiety sort of stems from the OCD, from that obsessive sort of mindset. I'd say definitely different from 10 years ago. And then as I was a kid, that was when it really went out of control. And I was, you know, a 12, 13-year-old wanting to play AFL football at the time, and then became so fit that I was winning all the middle distance running races. And it was compulsion to the point, well, it was like addiction, where I'd be, you know, 12 years old, getting up at 3 a.m, hiding bricks under my bed, training for, you know, 3 hours with all these bricks. Like, I can't even remember what the hell I was doing. And I'd hear my mum get up at 6, pretend I had just woken up, go for a run for an hour and a half, go to training that night and triple what my coach told me to do. I was like sort of malnourished almost. I just wouldn't eat anything that I saw as being unhealthy. And, this went on for a long time, stunted my physical development, meant I didn't actually develop until, you know, sort of 16, 17. So it was really out of control. And that, I guess, was the most extreme of it. And then when you're asking, 10 years ago, I'd say it was somewhere in between, where I just wasn't aware how to handle it. And I'd sort of, I guess, like an example would be, I was trying to start all these different businesses, and I would didn't know how my mind worked, which I haven't been diagnosed with it, but I think probably have, ADHD as well, and would be trying to do 5 different things at once. And, you'd be interested in this project, and then you'd lose interest, and, nothing would work. It was like, boom, chaos everywhere. So now I still think like that, but I've learned, okay, this is the stuff that, I can manage. How do I make sure that I'm checking in with myself, having the right people to help manage the other parts, and, really being aware of that? Because without that awareness, my life could probably become chaotic quite quickly again. I'd just start, because naturally my mind's wanting to go, I want to do this. I want to blah, 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 like, just, like it just like thinking about so many things, wanting to just do all these creative things, which, you sort of can do within reason. But if you try and do, if you try and let it get out of control, you'll just go around in circles. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, that's
100%. It's fascinating. I mean, it still blows my mind the level of or potentially the lack of awareness that a lot of people have in terms of a real deep understanding of themselves. And if they were to kind of explore these different tools, many that you've mentioned, life would be a lot easier. So what does that look like now in terms of, channeling essentially the, if it is undiagnosed ADHD, OCD, what does it look like from a lifestyle and a business point of view? E.g., you mentioned often you have a whole bunch of ideas. Do you put them all into the basket and come back to them in a couple of months? Like, where's your best efforts put now from a work point of view?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question. And it's sort of, I think if you've got a mind like what I have, it's like a continual refinement and a never-ending process of finding how can I, it's almost like it's like a sieve, and you've got, all these ingredients, and you're continually trying to like narrow them into, getting it, which it's getting there. But I think for me, it was really like the two main things I identified, I don't know, probably 7-8 years ago, were I want to do the acting and I want to help in mental health. And then it was a question of, okay, how do I actually sustainably do these two things? And it's sort of gone in different ways, and, did a few acting roles at one point, and I was really immersed in it. Then I was busy with the business and the mental health work. And now what I've really done is turn Move Your Mind into, essentially, it's like a mental health media company where at the top level, there's the podcast, we're doing things like the book, creating content that we license into organizations, partnering with different people. And then the other side with the film and TV, I was getting burnt out because I was doing all of that and then auditioning 5 times a week, and you sort of, you can't really sustain it. And I wasn't enjoying it. So I took a break from that. And then where that led to was me realizing, actually, I love the acting, but what I am more interested in is actually, I don't want to just audition and just be trying to do it that way. I want to try and create my own content. How can I do that? So what we've done now is right now I'm in the process of developing this TV show that it's like a situational comedy series centered in mental health, and doing that under the sort of guise of the whole Move Your Mind thing, where it's like, well, if we get this developed, that's for me, a dream project. If I get to act in it, produce this thing, it's centered in mental health, it's sort of combining everything, but it's also, if it works, it's going to help everything else I'm doing with Move Your Mind. So really trying to find, how can I sort of combine all of these things? So it's sort of complicated, but not complicated, and trying to work that out, which for me is so important, because if I'm not in alignment with what I want to do, or if I'm feeling in my gut that, there's things gnawing away at me that I'm, passionate about, that I'm not exploring, I can't do it. I can't ignore it, on probably an unhealthy level. Like, and I've never had a full-time job. And I remember I did for 3 days when I was in a pretty bad way about 8-9 years ago, probably 10 years ago. I took a job for 3 days in an office, and I had to quit on the 3rd day because I was like, you know what, I'd rather be out on the street than doing this. And no, not because I'm against doing that. And actually, for some people, that might be the best avenue for them. And there's not better or worse. I'm not, never advocating that. But I know for me, it does not work for me to be put in a structure and work that way. I cannot. It's like, I actually can't do it. If I did do it, and if I built a career where I worked my way up the corporate ladder, I 100% at best would be probably an alcoholic and drug addict right now. At worst, may not actually be alive, because I just would be suppressing myself to that point. So I think, and that's probably on the extreme end. And again, I want to be careful saying that's not me saying anything against anything. But I think to your point of what you said before, it is so important that we understand ourselves and how we individually, work, and what we respond well to and what doesn't work for us.
Dude, I couldn't agree more. I got fired from 3 jobs in 6 months when I tried to enter into someone else's business. And I think there's people like you and me who are unemployable, really, to most people. So I totally resonate, and I know a lot of people will resonate with that as well. Mate, who is the right person to pick up Move Your Mind? Who's it kind of targeted towards, that book?
The book's targeted at anyone really that sort of wants to just learn a little bit more about, how can I understand myself and other people better? What are some simple, tools that I can learn? How can I put that into practice? So anyone that's sort of, interested in this area but doesn't really know where next to go. So it's sort of a practical, guide for that. So I'd say anyone can benefit from it, but really if you're wanting to explore it more, and you don't know where next to go, it would be the perfect tool to, to pick up and use to then, look into what you can do next.
Beautiful. And for those that want to track you down and look into your work, where's the best spot for them to find you?
Easiest place would just be if you go to my website, nickbracks.com. That's got links to the book and podcast and everything else. And we've got, different courses and programs. So yeah, if you want to go there, you can find all of the links to everything.
Awesome, mate. Well done on everything you've achieved, and obviously, a number of the struggles when we first met 10 years ago. And yeah, full credit to you, especially for leading the way in that area. I remember back 10 years ago, it was very underground still, when you were one of the few that were prepared to step up and speak your truth and share your struggles. So congratulations on everything you've done.
Appreciate it, mate. And same to you. I've seen from afar what you've been doing, and it's, amazing to see it evolve, and always loved, the work you're doing and what you stand for. So appreciate you having me on the podcast.
Awesome. Thanks, brother.
Thanks for tuning in this week. As always, if you enjoyed listening, please leave a review, give us a shout out across socials, or share with a friend so that we can continue to share these incredible conversations with more and more people.